Someone books a rental car for a full week, finishes their trip early, and returns the car 3 days ahead of schedule, expecting a partial refund for the unused days. Instead, the final bill comes out higher than the original quoted price, even though the car was used for less time than originally planned. This feels backwards in almost every way a normal transaction is supposed to work, using less of something and paying more for it. It isn't a mistake on the receipt, and it isn't the rental company arbitrarily punishing early returns either. It's the predictable result of how rental car pricing is actually structured around length of rental, a system built on rate tiers that most renters never fully understand until they've already returned the car and seen the final number. It's a genuinely disorienting moment, standing at the counter watching a bill get larger the moment you announce you're bringing the car back sooner than planned, as if the system were somehow rewarding indecision over the very efficiency most people assume it should reward. Rental car pricing looks, from the customer's side, like a simple daily rate multiplied by the number of days booked. 7 days at a certain daily rate equals the total price, and returning early should logically mean paying for fewer of those days. And in a system built purely around a flat daily rate, that logic would hold up perfectly. But according to standard industry pricing practices documented by rental car companies' own terms of service and consumer travel reporting, rental car rates are typically structured as tiered pricing based on total rental length, meaning the daily rate itself is not a fixed number independent of how many days get booked. It's a rate that changes depending on which length of rental bracket the actual final rental duration falls into. This distinction matters because it means the number quoted at booking was never really a per-day price in the way most people understand that phrase. It was a per-day price conditional on the rental actually lasting the originally booked length, a condition that quietly stops supplying the moment the actual return date changes. Let's start with the basic mechanics of how tiered rental pricing actually works, because the structure is fundamentally different from a simple per-day multiplication most renters assume they're looking at. Rental companies typically publish different daily rates for different rental length brackets. A weekly rate, structured as a specific bracket covering roughly 5 to 7 days, is usually priced at a meaningfully lower effective daily rate than a shorter rental in the 3 to 4 day bracket, which itself typically carries a lower daily rate than a 1 to 2 day rental. The technical process works like this. When someone books a 7-day rental, the quoted price reflects the weekly rate bracket's lower daily rate applied across all 7 days. If that same renter returns the car after only 4 days, the final bill doesn't simply subtract 3 days' worth of the original weekly rate. It recalculates the entire rental using the daily rate that actually applies to a 4-day rental, which falls into a different, higher daily rate bracket than the one originally quoted, and that higher rate gets applied retroactively across every day the car was actually used, not just the days beyond the original quote. This is where an invisible recalculation mechanism takes over, one that most renters never see explained clearly at the counter or in the booking confirmation email. Because the final bracket is determined by the actual length of the rental rather than the originally booked length, returning early effectively demotes the entire rental into a shorter, more expensive rate bracket retroactively, meaning even the days that were genuinely used get repriced upward, not just the unused days getting forfeited. A renter who booked 7 days at $40 a day, expecting a $280 total, but returns after 4 days, might find those 4 days repriced at $55 each under the 4-day bracket, producing a total of $220, which is indeed less than the original total in raw terms, but represents a per-day cost significantly higher than expected. And in some pricing structures with steeper bracket differences, the recalculated total can end up close to or even exceeding what a slightly longer, correctly bracketed rental would have cost. There's a related invisible mechanism tied to how this bracket structure connects to the underlying economics of vehicle fleet management, one that explains why rental companies price this way, rather than simply offering a flat daily rate regardless of length. A rental car generates revenue only while it's rented out, and every day a specific vehicle sits idle in a lot between rentals represents a real, calculable cost to the company: insurance, depreciation, lot storage, and lost opportunity to rent that same vehicle to someone else. Longer rentals reduce the frequency of vehicle turnover, cleaning, inspection, and repositioning between renters, lowering the company's average per-day operational cost for that specific rental, which is part of why longer bookings get priced at a lower effective daily rate in the first place. The discount reflects genuine reduced operational overhead for the company, not simply a marketing incentive to book longer. 2 real-world patterns make this concrete. Consumer travel publications and rental car industry analysts have consistently documented and warned travelers about this specific pricing structure, frequently describing it using the framework of rate rules or length of rental pricing, with explicit advice to travel consumers to confirm cancellation and early return policies before booking a rental specifically shorter than the length that would qualify for a lower bracket rate. A second pattern shows up in how some rental companies have responded to consumer complaints about this structure by offering more transparent rate bracket breakdowns during the booking process itself, showing prospective renters what the daily rate would be at several different length brackets before they complete a reservation. A practice consumer advocates have specifically praised as helping renters understand the actual pricing structure before committing to a specific rental length, rather than discovering the recalculation only after an early return has already occurred. This challenges the common assumption that a rental car price functions like most everyday purchases, where using less of a bundled service straightforwardly results in paying proportionally less. In reality, rental length itself functions as a pricing input that determines which underlying rate applies, not merely a quantity multiplier applied to a single fixed rate, meaning the specific number of days a car actually gets used can retroactively change the per-day price of every day within that rental, including days that had nothing to do with the decision to return early. The friction point isn't that tiered pricing is inherently unreasonable, given genuine operational cost differences between short and long rentals. It's that the pricing structure gets presented to consumers at booking as if it were a simple day rate multiplication, when the actual mechanism only becomes fully visible, and sometimes only becomes financially relevant at all, after a rental concludes differently than originally planned. Zoom out, and this same bracket-based pricing recalculates retroactively based on actual usage rather than originally planned usage. Pattern shows up in other consumption-based pricing systems built around similar tiered structures. Cell phone data plans and cloud storage subscriptions frequently use tiered pricing where crossing a specific usage threshold, even briefly, can trigger a higher rate applied to the entire billing period rather than only the usage beyond the threshold, a structure that similarly surprises consumers who assume they're only paying incrementally more for marginal additional usage. Hotel loyalty and airline mileage programs sometimes apply similar retroactive bracket logic to qualifying tier calculations, where falling just short of a specific spending or stay threshold can retroactively affect the rate or benefit level applied to activity that already occurred earlier in a qualification period, rather than simply affecting benefits going forward from the moment the threshold was missed. So the next time a rental car bill comes back higher than expected after an early return, it's worth remembering what that final number actually represents. It probably isn't a punitive fee charge specifically for returning early, and it probably isn't a billing error either. It's more likely the predictable output of a tiered pricing structure where the actual length of the rental, once known, determines which underlying daily rate applies to the entire transaction. A structure that rewards accurately predicting rental length in advance considerably more than it rewards simply using the car for fewer days than originally planned.